So we want this to be a bit collaborative sessions, last session of today. And ideally it's going through what we call a blueprint. So we'll go through, what is a blueprint, what's a blueprint to TraceLink and our customers. And then we'll go through a bit of brainstorming and creating a blueprint and how much you do. You can work individually as pairs in a group, that's all great stuff. But so we'll go through the blueprinting discussion and then wrap up with some a Q&A. So before, you can obviously read some of this information on the slide, but has anyone ever done a blueprint or been presented a blueprint by maybe another software supplier? Or any ideas? Any hands?
Or consultancy.
Or consultancy firm?
SAP implementation.
SAP? Ooh, nice. So that might be quite a thick blueprint document, yeah. Okay, so what is a blueprint? It really is about going through a detailed plan of the software system, like what we're proposing here in terms of Mint and TraceLink, but it's really everything that the solution consulting organization really captures throughout the discussions we have with you. So we'll go through a few questions that we normally ask, and throughout the session today, and why this session is kind of at the end, is everything that we discussed previously in terms of the different orchestrations, the different pairings, is all the information we go through. So the idea of this session is just so you're aware of the kind of questions we'll be asking when we discuss an orchestration or pairing with you, just so you have an idea. And I think we discussed it someone discussed it in one of the earlier sessions this morning, is, we want to understand your business. Yeah. We may have worked with you on serialization and other things, but when we're talking about Mint and digitalization of business transactions, we want to get down into the nitty gritty, right? We really want to understand the business processes and where the challenges are and where the pains are. And the idea we want to do that is because we want to capture all of this in this blueprinting document, which is something that you kind of sign off on at the end of the process. And ultimately, what the blueprint does internally for us is it forms what we call a statement of work in terms of the services outlined to implement Mint in your organization. So going through some of those challenges and pain points helps us do what we call a value exercise, and we'll discuss that a bit later, but really show you where the value is using a more of a digital approach versus the more traditional manual approach. Any questions on that so far?
I think bonus points if you get on a call with your SC and you show them your magnet board and say, this is what I want to talk about, these guys are going to be very excited.
Yeah, and I think one thing too to add to what Moise mentioned is that a lot of times we chat with customers and they have to go to other people in the organization to kind of get sign-off, buy-in, some consensus around. This document and the discussions we had help tell the story along with your perspective from where you sit to say, this is what I think is best, and here's a supporting document that kind of gives evidence to it. Again, it does more. It's a lot for us internally, but I think it's more for the customer to make sure, does this make sense, to Moises' point, to the pain points we've described and challenges we're having, or strategic goals we put out from the company? Does this get us closer to those mile markers of being better as a company?
Yeah, and one point I'm just going to spell out here is this first one here in terms of the IT and business, the IT landscape. We've asked quite a few times, the data you receive, is it going into a system? Are you typing it manually in a ERP system, a WMS system? We want to know that. We need to understand your IT landscape. Because if you want to integrate with TraceLink from multiple systems, we need to know which ones, right? And what data needs to go. Some things might need to go in a TMS system. Other things might be just all living in your planning system or an ERP system. So these are the kind of conversations we have, what we call during the kind of the pre-sales cycle, to really understand your IT architecture so that we can then, advise better. Okay. I'm hoping everyone can kind of maybe read some of these questions, but this is just a short list of some of the questions that we go through discussing with our customers. So, so again, with the pre-sales organization, and we'll go through and have several meetings with you to really go through some of the objectives and strategies that you want to you adhere to, whether it's an IT initiative, whether it's a business initiative, whether it's a joint strategy internally. I think Terence asked earlier who has a digitalization strategy in the company, and you know, when we research and look through company profiles and the annual statements and documents that you have publicly on your website, a lot of companies have some sort of digitalization strategy. But what does that mean for you individually within your particular area? Whether it's just an external manufacturing team that we're talking to, whether it's logistics, whether we're talking broadly against supply chain. Corporate visions are great. But when it's all kind of nestled down into your particular team, how does your team adhere to that overall corporate mission or objective? So that's kind of the discussions we want to go through, as well as who should we be talking to. So we could be talking to the VP of supply chain, external manufacturing groups, logistics groups, but then we also need to talk to IT groups, and how do we pull these people all together to ask the relevant questions to understand the current challenges. And the challenges can be different when you're talking to external manufacturing or to logistics. But then IT might have their own challenges as well, right? So we, again, want to understand all of those different challenges. I'll just give a couple of moments to just, hopefully you can read a couple of questions, but you know, just to give you an idea of the kind of things that we'll be going through to understand the business.
Yeah.
Any questions or thoughts so far?
You'll see the bullet point here about, you know, how often do you receive a PO, AC, and ASN kind of thing. So there's metrics that most companies track in certain ways. So we ask about metrics and KPIs. Do you have them? Are you tracking against certain things? Are there areas that you're held accountable to on an annual or quarterly basis that you now want to shine a light on, and how, you know, digitalizing your supply chain can help improve those, enable you to improve those metrics, right? So we'll ask a lot about that, and you know, do you want to track them? Reports and dashboards. Moise mentioned the out-of-the-box solutions that we're going to have for some of those KPIs and metrics. It can also, again, we asked a ton of questions to anybody who would give us an ear, right? Just again, the more information we have, the better solution we can tailor. It may sound simple because we're connecting transactions, but I think it's spelling out that value after all these questions really makes it come to life and say, wow, yeah, you know, digitalizing sounds great, but this sounds better because I can tie it to a pain point or a goal, and it comes to life now. Yeah, and also, you know, each business unit will have different priorities for those transactions list, right? So we'll put a nice slide up with 10, 12 transactions, you know, end to end. But what's your priority as a business? You might have a really burning challenge just for POs and POX because you send hundreds of emails, loads of spreadsheets. It's really time consuming, where that time could be better spent in the business. So we were like, okay, let's break those two transactions down and understand, as Terence mentioned, the metrics behind it, so we can offer, you know, do a value piece and show you how much you could gain in terms of time or visibility, in terms of digitizing that process. So what's the priority? So we'd also like to understand the priority of the different transactions or the orchestration pairs that you're discussing with us. And there's just a few slides I just wanted to cover off in terms of what we add in the blueprint document, so we can really understand, again, your business. So we always go through a company profile. So we'll go and research your company, make sure we understand all the therapeutic areas, whether you're in a cost containment mode or whether you're in a growth mode. It's really important information that we try and capture. And then we, you know, any information you can help us with in terms of any strategy or goals, digitalization strategies. Companies that are private is a little bit harder for us to find the information. We'll still do our best. But again, this is where, you know, a partnership between both companies really helps us to try and go through all those necessary bits of information to try and build out the blueprint, which essentially you guys will be signing off. So we go over, you know, the overview in terms of who's been involved throughout all the discussions that we've had. So we like to capture all the different roles. And again, the reason for this is it's really important for our services teams to know who we engage during the kind of the pre-sales cycle, so that when services need to reach out to anyone, they know the right personas and people to reach out to. So what we'll then do is go through these kind of customer requirements. So on this example, we've actually got kind of two use cases. So we'll go through and detail the use cases where we've got, you know, integration with CMO and a logistics one down here.
And you can see the logistics one's got just 2 transactions in there. Again, it's where you want to start. Where are your pain points? Because Tracelink said, oh, we have got 7 or 8 in our list, doesn't mean you have to start with all 7 or 8. This is the blinded but real customer use case here. So, we started with gathering the transactions that they want for external manufacturing. So it's PO acknowledgement, ASN, inventory balance, and inventory adjustments. And then what's the flow of that? Is it MAH to CMO, CMO to MAH, and the like on the 3PL side, where we've got inventory balance and invoices. Okay, so again, very different, but again, exactly what the customer wants for kind of the first initial deployment. The blueprint also, again, with the help of maybe some of your IT teams as well, is to document any custom requirements. So we've mentioned that if you need additional fields, you've got additional transform requirements, you might have a homegrown ERP system, which is a little bit different. Again, we just capture all those different custom requirements so that when we kick off the project, we have all of those details to hand. Then we'll walk through and talk about different integration options. So we've spoken about integration. You've heard Bob this morning go through lots of formats and integration requirements earlier on. So again, that's another conversation we go through the different meetings that we'll have, again, to understand the IT landscape. Yeah, are you SAP using iDocs? Do you want to integrate? Do you want information to be push-pull from your system? How do you want it to operate? And again, we'll try and document all the format details on your side. And again, a little nod to the value piece at the end. The last column is just going through some quantity information. Again, just to give us an idea of how many of these transactions do you send per day, per week, per month. Sometimes that information can be quite difficult to get depending on where you sit within the different departments. But we try and urge you to try and help talk to finance department, talk to billing departments, whichever departments you need to speak to, so we can get a clear idea of those volumes. And then the next kind of page or section of the blueprint document is what we call the as is to be. So how are you operating today and where do you want to be? I think this is really important, and we need the business to sign off on this in terms of the discussions we have and what we document. So having the business sign off makes IT happy as well, and if we can get both parties to sign off, then it helps us with a kind of a successful project going forward. We touched upon kind of KPIs. Again, in this room here, does everyone know what KPIs drive their department or the area that they work in? Anyone? And we get this quite a lot. Some don't know, right? But there will be some. And again,
they change according to the targets. We don't know what you're measuring.
So they change according to the
targets.
Yeah. Exactly, right? But again, trying to get what drives in your department, what you're trying to strive through, and we hear OTIF. OTIF's always, flown around in terms of we want to improve our OTIF. But again, that's quite, for me personally, I think that's quite broad, and it impacts different departments in different ways. So if one of that is one of your overarching KPIs, we want to get specifics, right? How are you going to help the company increase it by 1%, 2%? What's important to your particular business unit? So again, we go through this KPI discussion and try and document that information in this blueprint. Again, a document that you guys will sign off on as well. So it's very much a collaborative two-way piece. So that really concludes what we wanted to go through in the blueprint, but really highlight why it's important for us to understand the business, right? Your business and how you operate today, because that will help us in terms of how we can help you move towards a more digital approach.